class gets worse as the days go by. Well, I'm sorry to hear. Is he your parents?
It's a gaggle of mice and an anthill just infesting our walls. That sucks.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say kids. No, that would be cataclysmic.
You know, I had this friend, Terry. I'm not quite sure where I met him. He had his PhD in philosophy from Yale. He was an MD from Iran. He went to University of Maryland for acupuncture. He was also an herbalist. He didn't want to teach at all. Not academically. And I remember one day, he used to come to our house quite often. It was summer in Roseville, and he gets to be like 125, 130. So he was wearing a jacket, a vest, a turtleneck, a t-shirt, and a few other things, and he was sweating. And I said, Mr. Happy, just take off some clothes. No, it's just you and I, and I've seen you. So he says, no, it's the spirits. So what the hell are you talking about? The temperature is like 120, you're wearing all the stuff. I see you have your jacket on, a sweater, and a t-shirt, and a shirt, and you have a fan on. If you were to, undress, maybe a little, you wouldn't need the fan, but it looks good nevertheless. So, all that aside, is there anything else you want to talk about? Or should I just, go home? Was it a sneeze?
Yeah, I'm going to throw it back right now, so I'm suffering a little bit. Come at you.
You're suffering, you said?
A little bit, yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. Please. How can I? Oh, yes, of course.
You mentioned that you do a lot of writing, apparently.
Yes.
First thing in the morning.
Whoa. Why is that funny? Is it his tone of voice? Is it what he said?
Spirits.
What is wrong with you? Is it the water or something else?
Apparently.
Apparently what?
I don't know. Like the
It's the spirits.
No, the addition of the word just coming funny.
Yeah, it tickles you, yes. Yeah.
I like tickling. You mentioned that you do a lot of writing.
You have a great voice. What are you doing? Why don't you go to the radio or something?
I have a face for radio. Well,
Okay.
thank you. Anyway, writing. What does that do for you? What do you? What does that do for you? Is it a sort of introspective exercise? Is it just a hobby you picked up and you never gave up? Or?
I remember, and forgive me for self-indulgence here, but Hussein and I were sitting, and one day he looks at me and he says, so Amir, are you going to write? Saying, write about what? I was like 19 or so. I have nothing to write about. I don't know anything. I said, yeah, that's good. Don't write, because you're an imbecile. He said, okay, thank you. And then there is something about our tradition. A few thousand years that, it's kind of like when you fall in love with someone, you write them poetry, for example, or you get them flowers from the cemetery. That's what we did because we didn't have any money. So when someone in our community got sick, we would go to the cemetery, look for some flowers, make sure no one's around, that the dead are really dead, and take the flowers and take them to the hospital. And so I remember at a certain point, I began to write poems and then give them to my teacher. And then he would tell me on more than one occasion, did you write this for me? He would ask. I said, yes. Make sure to trash it when you leave the house. Why? I would ask. Because you don't know the Persian language well enough to write poetry, and plus, your poems are trash. I said, okay, thank you. And then I suppose it got stuck with me. And most of the things I talk about in my classes really have to do with just sitting and writing. Sometimes students ask questions, and I go and I'm walking to my office and I'm saying to myself, that was a really bad answer. It was a little too surface-like, so it occupies my mind. And so when I get to the office like around 4, I just write down not so much the question, but what occupied the space. And I just write about that for 2, 3, 4 hours. Hello, hello. I don't know if you have produced music. I used to sing and play some instruments, and we recorded some songs. This is like in the 80s. You guys are dead or not born yet. And I remember going to the studio and we had to do a song like 20 times to get it just right. And I think thinking is very much the same way, that you have some ideas in your head and you write them down, and then you see the idea. And if you're to some extent honest and sincere about your own way of discovering things, you come to realize that yes, the idea is good, but it's unclear even to you. And so you begin to unpack it. And it begins with a sentence, and it ends up to be like a 20-sentence paragraph. Then it's all of a sudden like 50 pages, and it's 100 pages, and so on and so forth. And when someone talks to you or asks you, can we talk about time, for example? Can we talk about death, for example? These are topics that, for me, it was something of interest. And I sat in my office for many, many weeks, if not months, and just thought and write about it. I think there was an impetus to all of this, which was I left Laney in 2007 because I got a job at Folsom Lake College. And I never liked the Bay Area, I still don't. But things for me didn't go well there because first the college was surrounded by churches, and it was a Republican belt, and lots of Mormons. And I wasn't like this. I was very vulgar. I would just say nasty things in class. It was loud and obnoxious. And thinking back, it was really just a bad way to do business with students. And then one day they call me to the office and they say, it's not working out for us. The students liked me, but the administrators didn't. So there was a huge riot for a couple of days because I was dismissed. I was forced to sign a form and resign. But I took comfort in the fact that, I could always go to the car wash and wash some cars. And I had a house in Roseville, so that was fine. I was single. Luckily for me, Laney opened up a position again, and I applied. But I began to examine the culture in which I was living, mostly the white culture in Folsom Lake, then some of my Caucasian friends here. And because temperamentally I'm very passive, but those couple of episodes kind of just changed me a little bit, and I gravitated more towards writing. I don't know if the things I write are any good or not, but it's something to do. And I think part of it really has to do, another part is, you get older a little bit, and as you get older, you begin to reflect, I suppose, on death. At least I do. My father's getting older. A lot of people in my community have died because of just old age and getting sick. And so the presence of death basically imposes itself upon you, and you have no choice but to kind of reflect on it, feel about it. And it frightens you a little bit, if I was to be honest. It frightens you on many levels, but especially so. I don't know if you're married, and imagine for a moment that when you leave your house, your wife completely forgets about you. Doesn't make you lunch. Let's just say she's a stay-home wife. She doesn't think about you. She doesn't make you food. She doesn't care how the house looks. And you come home and there is nothing ready. And you say hello and she doesn't respond to you. And if she does, it's really quite uncaring. She's distracted by her cell phone and by other things. And you feel as if your presence or absence doesn't really mean anything. And then you sit back and you say, really, after 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 or 20 years of living with this person, I've become irrelevant. And then you multiply your wife by, well, there's your father, there's your mom, there's your sister, there's your brother, and a whole host of things, people in your life. And that's eventually what's going to happen to you. No one's going to remember you because you really haven't done anything. You haven't left a mark. Khalil Gibran, the Lebanese poet, had said something really quite, I think, creative and insightful that, you go to the bay and you walk the shore and you walk on the sand and you can see your footprints and they're beautiful. The waves come and the waves go. And you look back and there is no footprint left. It's all gone. And you say, wow, it's like I've never existed. And that really is what death does. We don't exist after a while. And it may be that your wife may have a picture of you on the mantle somewhere, but the truth is, after a while, it just becomes part of the tables and the chairs of the house that oftentimes are dismissed. You just don't see them. And so there are days, and I think it's out of urgency, I kind of just wake up at 3 in the morning, get myself together, and come to school. But there is nothing to write. I'm a little too tired, so I just lay on the floor and go to sleep. But, there are lots of layers to kind of go through, and it's a little too difficult for me right now. But writing, really, it does kind of like editing the way you think about things. You just keep going through revision. That's why when, I message you that I'm not going to give you any feedback on your essays, because it's not really going to do much. If you cared for the way you think about things, at a certain point in your life, hopefully, you'll kind of just, instead of focusing 10, 15, 20 minutes on writing an essay, you'll probably spend weeks. Not because of a grade, because you really just want to understand something. It's kind of like going to therapy. For the first time, you really want to understand what the hell is going on with you and why everything you touch just dies. And it's a painful process, but it's a good amount of struggle. And if you're able to be patient after 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, the fruits will come your way. Yeah. And most of the writing I do has no bibliography, no footnotes. Yeah. So. Anyone else before we go home? Matt, what's wrong with you?
Thinking about the answer.
Sorry to hear that. I still have your container. My apologies. So that's it? Anything? Ozan?
What is this?
Life. Yeah. I think there are a couple of things that usually happens to us, and maybe more than two. sometimes temperamentally, if you happen to be a very, very extreme introvert, kind of like Jesus, if you will, you kind of come out of your mother's womb and you say, life sucks. No one has done anything to you. There is no trauma inside you. You're just wired to look at life and say, I'm just unhappy. You have great parents, you have great siblings, you have great money, a great house, but for some strange reason, nothing is enough for you. And oftentimes, I suppose you sit somewhere in the corner of your room and you ask, why the hell was I born? You know, life doesn't give me anything. It doesn't offer me anything. And you kind of walk into everything half-heartedly, you know. You invest only 50% of who and what you are, and you're really not very passionate about anything. And you know that whatever relationship you walk into, it's not going to last. Now, we are very cunning and deceptive animals. The assumption is that we presume that this is going to be it. I love this person, I love this thing, it's going to last for a long time. But you can't change the way you've been wired. You know, you've just been born or wired to be a wanderer. You have a forest life, even though you may be living in the city. There is this wonderful kind of little passage in the Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't know if you know of the epic. It's about 5, maybe to 10,000 years old, maybe 3,000-4,000 written-wise, orally maybe 10,000 years. And his mother, Ninsun, one day she just grows very, very tired that her son is just all over the place. And she looks at the gods and she says to them or asks them, why have you given me a son whose heart knows no rest? I mean, just think about that. Or even think about what you have in one of the Gospels, that the birds have the trees, the foxes have the earth, but the human being has no place to rest his head. They're always like chasing after something, God knows what, really. And so if you happen to be that sort of a person, where it doesn't matter where you go, there is no cradle really to hold you for too long, then you're always going to feel restless, even if your life may be in the most stable of positions. And the other aspect of disappointment is it's something that happens later on, in the sense that you walk into an event with a great amount of hope. And that's what human life really is, hope. You come to school because of hope. That once you graduate, you will get a job that you will enjoy. That job will give you enough money. That money will give you a 1 or a 2 or a 3 bedroom, either an apartment or a house that you can own. It'll get you a car, some stability. I mean, that's how human beings are governed, by a good amount of hope and dreams. And then what happens is you kind of graduate from those things. You get your degrees, you get your job, you get this, you get that. And for some strange reason, you realize that you've been chasing a carrot and you can never reach it. And the job that used to hold so much hope, all of a sudden turns into something disappointing. You know, you wanted money and now you have it, but you realize that, well, okay, you have all this money, but you hate the fact that you have to go and work at this particular place every single day, and you ask, am I going to spend the rest of my life doing this? Okay. So a good amount of life, first of all, starts with hope, and lots of it. And then if you don't reach it, that's one disappointment. If you do reach it, eventually become saturated, then you become disappointed. Okay. Then there is a disappointment that comes with this overarching understanding, kind of like what the Buddha did, for example, or like what Plato did, which is, you know, I had lots of money, the Buddha says, a Siddhartha, but it didn't make me happy. I had great parents, it didn't make me happy. I thought that marriage would, so I got married, that didn't make me happy. I thought maybe having a kid would make me happy, that didn't make me happy. I thought maybe I should go to the forest, abandon the great renunciation, as they call it. Maybe I should go to the forest and sit and fast and meditate and look for things that all the sages that have been talking about. And he realizes that, okay, so you have a great dream, you have an out-of-body experience, but like anything else in life, the experience in its intensity, it kind of diminishes as time goes on, and it's just a faint memory. He says, well, I'm not really here for cheap tricks. I really want to understand. And so he walks away from the whole thing. He sits somewhere. And he has a breakthrough of sorts. And he comes to understand that It doesn't matter where in life you walk into, what branch of life you sit on. The truth is, all of life is disappointing. All of life contains a good amount of suffering. And so it says the best thing to do is really don't have very many desires. And if you do want to have desires, make sure you know what those desires are and you know what the outcome is. In other words, if you and I were to go out on a date, both of us will suffer. But you can lessen your suffering by doing the following. Let's say I invest 100% of who and what I am, my hopes, my dreams, into this relationship. You are a practitioner Buddhist. You know exactly how relationships work. You don't have, you pursue, hopefully you will have. You will play with what you have for some time until you grow tired of it. Once you're satisfied, you get bored. In boredom, you become frustrated, irritated. And you begin to reflect as to why you chose to pursue this in the first place. But now you're committed, you're married, you have children. And there is no way for you to get out. I mean, you can if you want to damage the kids, of course. Okay? So you're stuck in it. So what you have, if you know all of this, then you say, I'm going to go out with Amir, probably will get married, but I know he's not going to make me happy. So you have hope and disappointment, like two siblings, and they balance each other out. You're not too happy, you're not too sad. You know what the outcome is, and that's one of the tragedies of, I suppose, having insights about things. Because you don't need to call 1-900 psychic. You know exactly how your future is going to unfold. Eventually, once you're saturated, as most things will eventually saturate you, disappointment is just right around the corner. So you have a couple of options. You can either walk into disappointment willingly, or you could put your head in the sand and say, it's never going to happen to me until it will, or it does. And then you have to deal with the suffering and the pain that it causes. If you wait, which is perhaps at some point a better thing, is that you can be happy in this relationship for maybe 2 years. And then eventually life is going to drag your head out and say, look, but you've had 2 years of joy. If, on the other hand, you walk into this relationship knowing full well how it's going to be, every single day you're going to have joy and despair at the same time. You want to laugh, and sometimes you do, but you catch yourself saying, this is stupid. If you have the capacity to embrace the birth and the death of the relationship both at the same time, if you have the capacity, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Was that your phone? Is it a text from a guy? Yuck. Anyone else? How's that loser friend of yours? The loser guy.
What do you mean?
Is this a loser? Has he tried to contact you?
No.
Good job. So are we... Wolf? Spike? Wolf? Anything? Matt?
How should you navigate as a leader, whether you're a leader of your family or, as your job or your political office, how should you handle being hated by those underneath you?
I think you should read Machiavelli was a prince. He wasn't a prince. Machiavelli worked with various kings of his day until he was kicked out and he went somewhere and he wrote this book called The Prince. I don't know if it's chapter 15 or chapter 18, and there are some very, very insightful and beautiful paragraphs as to how a king should hold on to power. Love is good. The problem with love, if I was to love you and you were to love me not as much, it would mean that you have a great amount of power over me. But because I love you a great deal, there's a good chance that you're going to abuse me and lose respect for me. So you want to make sure that you don't love your leaders, because eventually they're going to lose respect for you. So for those of you in this class who are in a love relationship and you love more than the other person, get yourself ready to be pushed around a little. Okay. You don't want to be hated, because what hate does, it forces people to revolt against you. And you need to understand, hate has a history. Let's say you ask me a question, I respond to your question in a certain way that irritates you. And then you ask for clarification, irritation times 2, now you're frustrated. In frustration, you ask another question, now frustration times 2, now you become angry. Then you ask your question again, anger times 25, now you hate me. There is nothing about me that you like. In anger, you can tolerate me, as all of us in this class have been in relationships where anger comes about, but it's still tolerable. But when hate comes about, there is nothing about this person that you enjoy. And so what you do is you go to my dean and you file a complaint. And you say, other students feel the same way. And then I get called into the office. And let's say there is no longer this tenure stuff going on. And so they look at me and they say, Amir, thank you for your service for the past 25 years or so, but here's a handshake, goodbye. Okay. So what hate does is that it creates an environment where people out there who hate you will try to backstab you, will try to bring you down from your throne. Okay? And one of the nice things about Facebook or modern technology is that if you hate someone, you can just post all these nasty things about them. Okay? What you need to do is create fear. Fear not only fetches love, it also fetches respect. It also reminds you that there are consequences should you cross certain boundaries. I don't know how well anyone can apply in a healthy way the element of fear. I'll tell you a story though. You may enjoy it or maybe not. We had a friend. We had 2 friends. So one of them gets married, and he's very, very nice, very kind. Hello. And they were married for about 10 years. And his wife was all over him. She was bullying him. And one day he grows really, really tired. So one day a cat comes to the dinner table and meowing around. So the guy picks up the cat and twists the neck off. And the cat dies. And his wife looks at him and says, oh, if this is your way of making me fear you, it's not going to happen. You should have done this the first day we got married. This is just a show. I'm not buying it. Our other friend, what happened, he realized that his wife is pushing him around after the first day of marriage. So a cat came around meowing. He got the cat, pulled the neck off, and looked at the wife. He said, oh, what do you learn from this? Well, I can't really piss you off, can I? And the wife became very tame and very passive for the remainder of their marriage. One of the things, but throughout their marriage, she was very kind, very decent. At the same time, he let the wife know that just in case she crosses certain lines, reprimands are going to be there. Okay. And we're talking about like 50 years ago in Iran. This is a male chauvinistic environment. It's not like today where it's chauvinistic environment. And one of the things that is really good about fear is that, I mean, look, there are many people, for example, in this class and perhaps other classes where students are not doing work. Well, there's a good chance they're going to fail the class. And there's a reason why they want to do that, because they don't really care about their future. They actually think that they're young, they're going to forever remain young. They're not taking this stuff seriously. And I'm not talking about grade, I'm not talking about passing a class. I'm talking about Matthew 20 years from now. Where is he going to end up? And the country is not getting any better. Homelessness is not declining, it's rising, right? Everything that's toxic and poisonous are on the rise. And just in case there's a chance that you want to get married, and by the time you're like 20, 30 or 40 and you want to get married, divorce rate is probably about 80%. Okay? So everything is stacked against you. Add to it the fact that you're not taking this stuff seriously. Now, the question is, well, what do I need to do to make sure that your future is relatively healthy and stable? I can scream and yell and spank and hit you. That's going to cause a good amount of anger and eventually hatred towards me, you towards me. Now, the question is, well, how do I make you fear me? If you fear me, then you will respect me. If you respect me, then you will listen to me. If you listen to me, then there's a good chance that you won't disappoint me. Now, you may think that you're doing this for me, but the truth is, it's a camouflage. I do all of this stuff to secure your future 5 or 10 years from now. Now, how do I do that? Well, romantic love is not going to do it. That's for sure. Hatred is not going to do it. So how do you respect someone? You watch a couple of videos of Mike Tyson. In fact, there is this version of him fighting. It's an hour and a half long, I think, like all of his knockouts. And you watch this man for an hour and a half and you say, man, I don't want to get into the ring with this guy. You don't hate him, but you fear him. And you fear him first because you know your size, you know how much power you got in your body. You also see Mike Tyson. And let's say you also know a few things about the prowess that lives in the white man, the brown man, the yellow man, and the black man. And these are things you need to know. They're important. Okay? And then you say, okay, do I really want to fight him? And the answer is no. And you fear him. You respect him. Why? You've sat for an hour and a half and you've seen him fight. And that gives you some clues as to where you stand against him. So if you want to fear someone, if you want to create fear in someone, make sure they know who and what you are. And when you watch Mike Tyson, you're not just watching him. What he does for you is that he forces you to humble yourself. Boxing is an art. Mike Tyson has a good amount of anger. He has honed that anger into this craft called boxing. And in your humility, you say, you know what? I fear this man. So if he tells me to bow, I will. If he tells me to kiss his feet, I will. And just in case I get really, really angry when I want to punch him, I will not. Now, let's say you become really attached to Mike Tyson, and there comes a point where you say, I really love boxing, and I love boxing because of Mike Tyson. So he becomes a conduit for you to travel through and reach this world of boxing and become interested. And then he begins to train you. Now, because you love Mike Tyson, and because you love him because you understand him, and because you fear him through understanding, and because now you fall in love with boxing, you will do as he says, and you will not try to disappoint him, because that will cause his wrath or anger to come out, and that will punish you. So the best leader, is someone that causes hate and then takes you out and gives you ice cream. Gives you lots of love, but reprimands you. Just in case you miss some marks. And what you have is this really, really beautiful and fine balance. Love, hate, at the very center you have fear. So fear becomes the core point. Sometimes it goes towards love, sometimes it goes towards hate, but it usually stays at the very center. You can't do that on a massive level. I can't come to class and make everyone fear me. First, because not everyone is interested in me. Second, not everyone is interested in the future. Third, there may be lots of other things like the tone of my voice, like the way I express ideas, maybe my background, who the hell knows. There are some people, for whatever the reasons are, there is this attraction that either happens just the moment I walk in, or after the first day, or after 5 weeks. And what happens is they ask a question, I respond to a question in a relatively funny way that captures their attention, their interest. They go home, they become a bit more curious, they come back to class with more questions, and all of a sudden they realize, well, when they go home and they talk to their friends or companions, they're parroting back all the things we talked about in this class. And then, of course, their companion says, oh, Matthew, in the past 4 weeks, you've grown to be so wise. What happened? Did you see Jesus Christ? Did you have a dream or a vision? Did you read a couple of books? Now, they have no idea what the background is, but that really doesn't matter. And what happens is that you begin to change your major from, say, history to philosophy, or from philosophy to history, depending on who the instructor is and what they've done for you. And you begin to kind of, like a nice little dog, follow them around. And that's a good thing, because you have, instead of finding the life to be somewhat of a desert, and out of desperation you watch Harry Potter or you watch The Matrix. For example, that every Monday and Wednesday you go to a class from 2 in the afternoon till 4 o'clock. And that's your magical realm. And then as you spend more time with this person, your world kind of expands, grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And very much like the way I used to write poems for my teacher, you begin to write poetry for history, for this, for that. And all of a sudden you become consumed by the world of ideas. And just in case you go to a gathering and someone is talking about history and you raise your hand and you say, well, can I say a couple of things about Napoleon, for example? And they say, yes, sure. And you say a few things, but you realize now you've been contaminated by really this passion to reflect and think deeply and healthily about things. And you realize as you're talking about Napoleon in a gathering of friends and foes, that you're not really speaking well about Napoleon. You don't really have much knowledge, and if you do, you don't express it well. So you go and write. Not because you want to grade, not because you want to impress anyone, but you just want to kind of be clear as to how it is and what it is that you're actually thinking. Okay? And as you begin to write more, your fascination and your interest and the world of ideas, which can be quite magical, will just grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so there is no one on the outside that you fear. You just fear you sounding incompetent, first to yourself and then to others. And there's a good amount of shame. And I mean, that by this time, the Jesus Christ inside you has risen. No one needs to condemn you. You can condemn yourself really well at this stage because you can catch yourself. Because to be able to catch ideas, to catch thoughts, to catch emotions before they blossom into these poisonous weeds, you catch them, you sit, you think, you write, you observe. So, does that, maybe not. Olivia?
I'm 18. Why do I feel like really old?
Well, your question is why I'm a weirdo. So, I'm just going to create some stories. They may be wrong, but who the hell cares? Let's say you're 5, your parents divorce. At the age of 5, where you're supposed to go out there, play basketball, play football, play hockey, play with dogs and cats, you're burdened with solving these heavyweight problems. What's wrong with my dad? Why is he sad? What's wrong with my mom? Why is she sad? Why does my dad drink so much? And you're trying to understand the world of the adults. And you're only 5. And you were born to just have fun for the first, 50 years of your life. For at least the first, 10 years. And you walk around the house and it's just a complete mess. And as a kid, you have every right to laugh, to have fun, to just break things. That's what kids do, And the house is supposed to be a safe space. You break a plate, your mom says, honey, that's great, there is another 20, break them all. And so playtime is good for you. It kind of helps your brain to develop a little bit, but you don't get a chance to do that, And you realize all of a sudden your ears, which are only 5 years old, have become confessional booths for your mom and for your dad. You're there to witness sadness and sorrow on their faces. And you realize your friends are having a good time, the few that you have, and you want to be free-spirited very much like them. But for some strange reason, your parents have just weighed you down. You're 5 and you have all these cinder blocks chained to you. And though you have fun, but you feel guilty for having fun because your mom isn't having fun, your dad isn't having fun, your brother and sisters aren't having fun. And so you condemn yourself for just being a kid. You're not supposed to be a kid. You can be a kid because no one in your family is enjoying life, and you have no right to enjoy life. So you begin to kind of inherit. If not inherit, you begin to carry the burdens of other people. I mean, it's no joke when Jesus says to his disciples, if you want to follow me, you have to carry the sins of your world. If you love your mom and if you want to follow your mom, you have to carry her sins. And her sin is, maybe he did something to your father. Maybe your father did something to them. Maybe they just outgrew each other. Who the hell knows? But the result is you have to carry this. Okay? And so when you carry this, you realize, well, you're hanging out with your friends. They want to have fun with you, but you're just sitting there moping around. You're no fun, And so they want to say, let's go play hide and seek. And then you say, I played hide and seek with my parents a few years ago. My dad went into hiding and he never came back. I'm still looking for him. And they say, what the hell are you talking about? My dad just disappeared. And all of a sudden you realize that, that your narratives are beginning to ruin your friends as well. They don't want to play with you anymore. And your confidence kind of goes down. You're no longer a child who, kind of like the story we told about the bird in the cage, that your cage, if it used to be this big, now it's come very, very small. There are no songs to sing and there's no place to fly. So you kind of just sit. And you don't want to hang out with anyone. And one of the things that pain and loss and grief does is that it forces you into loneliness. Not a healthy kind of aloneness. I'm talking about loneliness, a place where you're just not reachable. And if anyone reaches you, you're a counterfeit. You're only showing the cream, but not what's underneath. On the surface, you laugh, you have a good time. It's like people who have traumas, and they're like really deep-seated. Kind of like Søren Kierkegaard, Danish philosopher, who used to go to parties, be the son of the party, but he would always walk home alone, and most often in tears, because he knew that he was faking it. Even though at parties he's at the very center of the universe, but when he goes home, he's just a dark cloud. And by the time, your parents worry about you, so you go to therapy at the age of 6. Man, and that sucks, because at the age of 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, you have to deal with this part of yourself that should not even exist. And yet it does. And you're not in Palestine, a culture where just war and pain and suffering is just part of life. When they shipped us to India and then to America, we knew to some extent what's waiting for us. I was a janitor for a few years at Castilian. It was a Davis dormitory, Shell gas station at Del Paso Heights, Church's Fried Chicken on Howe Avenue in Sacramento. So you had to do all this crummy stuff. And you never complained. You couldn't complain because complaining was not part of the culture. When you complain, you say, I. And you look around, everybody's fucking suffering. And you have no right to talk about your complaints. You shut your mouth, live your life, and just be quiet. And that's what happens, okay? So at the age of 5 or 6 or 7, when you go to therapy, You're forced to talk about yourself. As a kid, you shouldn't exist. And if you do exist, you should say, I want a Sonic toy. I want a bicycle. And what therapy does, it just lasers on your problems. And from that point on, you become addicted to yourself. You know? And you don't want to hang out with anyone that's a little too addicted to the wrong parts of themselves. Okay? And you learn how to hide really, really well from that point on. Because you don't want anyone to see you, because when they see you, all they see is just a mess. You know? What was your question? Oh, feeling old, that's right. My kids were born here. They're silly. They're more than silly, they're stupid. I get kids half their age coming from Iran to here. They're well-mannered, they speak well, they're into politics, they're into social stuff. You say, really? He's only 10. Because that's what the environment creates. And you say, well, how could a 10-year-old be so burdened, so versed in political philosophy? You know, how could they kind of come out and say, I hate religion because of A, B, C, D reasons? The sort of burden they carry is very different than the sort of burden, say, someone like you or me carries here in this culture. So from the age 5, you have to deal with the adult world. By the time you're 18, you know, you haven't lived a life of a kid as defined in the American culture, where your parents take you to the park, you go to Disneyland, you know, you do all these like silly things for the first 5, 10, 15, 20 years to create a relatively healthy rapport with your parents. And then there is something about our frontal lobe, our brain. It loves puzzles. That's why we like going out with people who are messed up. Because, you know, we want to figure out who and what they are. You want to put them back together, okay? And so you say, okay, I have all this history. It's like this humongous puzzle. What's the best way to approach this history? How about if I do philosophy? How about if I do psychology? If I do history? Now, your friends, you know, one is playing with Barbie dolls. The other is, I don't know, what the hell they do, people these days. They want to go and, I don't know, do a concert of Beyonce, and you're saying, no, I want to go listen to a good sermon. What the hell? You know? And so you realize you just don't fit in. That's one way of feeling old. The other is temperamentally, you just happen to be an introvert, and introverts are just weird, period. They're just weird. You know, nothing satisfies them. And so they kind of lock themselves in a room somewhere, and they just read or think or feel or cry. They're always dark and gloomy. In some ways, being or feeling old is a shortcut. You can do a lot of silly things in life till you get to be 40. And then you say, that's my life. How pathetic. And then you'll feel really, really old and really, really crummy about yourself. And then you want to make your life anew, something that's relatively different, better. Okay. And then you stop drinking, you stop smoking, you stop texting silly people with silly things. But you're 40. Your body's worn out, you've drank too much, you've smoked too much. And it's difficult overcoming any habit or addiction. But when you're 18 and you feel old, every time you try to smoke or drink or just do silly 18-year-old things, there is like 50% joy and 50%, am I stupid for doing this? So there is condemnation and repentance at the same time of you having fun. You know, Jean-Paul Sartre has this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful story or a set of images, if you happen to be somewhat creative. Imagine, and forgive me for those of you in this class who are allergic to such things, but imagine your companion telling you how beautiful you are, how compassionate you are, how intelligent you are, how this you are, how that you are, and they just melt you like chocolate. And you as a woman take him into your bedroom and you undress and he undresses and you love them for all the wonderful things they just told you. And you guys are both naked on the bed and you realize they're doing weird things to your thighs and to your buttocks and to your breasts and to your this and to your that, and you say, wait a minute, I've been reduced to a piece of meat. What the hell is this? And though from one point, one angle, you're getting a good amount of pleasure, from a different side, your reflection comes in and says, I don't like the pleasure that's the outcome of being objectified. And that's what happens when you get a little old. You want things to be profoundly meaningful, valuable, and oftentimes you can't find it. So that even ages you more at the age of 18. You shouldn't read Soren Kierkegaard, but you can if you want to. He had mentioned that the moment he was born, he came out of his mom with gray hair, gray beard, and lots of wrinkles. He died relatively young. He was a hunchback, lots of psychic tension inside him. He was a miserable man, but he wrote some wonderful literature. There is nothing wrong with being miserable. Just create something with it. One else? Terry, yes.
Who are you going to vote for?
I'm sorry?
Who are you going to vote for in this election?
Well, this is California. It's blue. I've never voted.
Really?
But Kamala is so cute. I am tempted to find her phone number, ask her out on a date to see if she says yes, but without her husband. Then bring her to class, close the door, turn off the lights, and talk politics in dark. So, anyone else?
Are we wired to always be afraid of death?
I'm sorry?
Are we wired to always be afraid of death regardless of age?
Of death? When my kids were very young, their grandfather, my father-in-law, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So my wife had to go to the hospital on a daily basis. And I'm not talking about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm talking for hours. And then when he was released from the hospital because no one could do anything for him, he was sent home and my wife had to go there and change, Band-Aids and give him things. And so every time the kids would come home, they would say, where is she? And what they did for the next few years is that when, of course, he passed, sometimes I have some health issues. I used to have, maybe I still do. I used to throw up. And when I throw up, it's like an earthquake. The entire house shakes. And the kids would get really, really worried. And they would get worried because they saw their grandfather die a miserable death. And my father is now sick. And so every day when I go home, they say, so how's Baba Nasser? My father. And so what they also did for the next few years is that they asked their mom to sleep next to them. So all three of them just kind of gathered in one tiny bed. And oftentimes my wife would wake up and say, oh, my back, my neck, my arm, my this, my that. And she would always be exhausted. And part of it really has to do with the fact that the kids were scared of her leaving the house to visit her father. So they want to make sure she's always present. If you've had perpetual experience of someone in your family or in your circle of friends passing away, then you're forced to kind of always reflect on grief, on coming home not finding someone because they're dead. If you happen to be as unfortunate as me, that you've been in a community of people when you saw them at the age of 50, they were healthy, time passes, they're now 80 and 90, one by one they get sick and die. And as you look yourself in the mirror and you see more wrinkles and you have a triple bypass, you say, man, maybe I should take death seriously. So the more it happens to you, around you, you have no choice but to think about it. And the more you think about death, the more meaningless your life will become in some ways, and the more meaningful it becomes in other ways. Why? Because death and time are very closely related. Okay? The only way you have a future is because of time. You see yourself another 50 years. And the only way you make your life in the present meaningful is because of the narratives of the past. You bring them forward, you play with them, you try to figure out why this happened to you 5 years ago. Who you are is because of the past, and who you are because of the imaginations and fascinations you have about the future. And that's how your present time is spent. What death does is that it says, listen, this is what death says to you. I don't give a shit about your past. If you don't like your father, pick up the goddamn phone, say hello to him. End it, because you aren't going to see him anymore. You have 2 weeks left. So death only focuses on the big, the most significant, important things in your life and says, if it's unresolved, get over yourself. Give him a call, okay? Your future plans, you want to take stats, economics, business, psychology, yuck to all. You say, since I don't have much time, I want to take classes that are most meaningful. And you begin to shop. And you have a list now. It's not like you have all this money in your pocket, i.e. time. You walk into Costco and you fill your basket with junk. You have a list with specific items. Anything that deadens me, takes life away from me, passion away from me, I'm not going to sign up, not going to enroll. Any conversation. And so you become very, very particular, very specific, because you have this bucket now. And this bucket has been emptied by death. Your past, irrelevant. Your dreams. Buying a Tesla, are you fucking stupid? None of those things matter. What you want to do, you have your health, you want to walk around the lake, you want to enjoy your feet, your legs, the fresh air, looking at people, being healthy. Right? And so, now that this bucket is empty of past and future, you say, what should I put in it? Now, this is so difficult because you have all these things around you. Death looks at them and says, they're all junk. But somehow you have to make the day turn into night. And you want to make sure it's meaningful. You look around and you can't find any. And if you're unable to find anything meaningful to put into this bucket of the present moment, you get really, really depressed. And there is nothing to talk about, And there are no teachers out there who can help you unless you can find someone who can inspire you. And that inspiration can go into this bucket and make your life meaningful. But reflecting on death is no joke. It is such a horrendous, grieving stage to be in. And you have no idea when it's going to be over. And you have no idea how it's going to turn your life upside down. But are we wired to think about death? No. Unless it's happening around you. There is a Buddhist practice that you just sit and you watch your own corpse in front of you. رو بگو رسان دمی خاموش نشین آن خموشان سخنگو را ببین. That if you want to hear the wisdom of the sages, the wise people, walk to the cemetery. But make sure you walk in there quietly, that there is no noise in your head. And when there is no noise in your head, then you can listen to what those buried are telling you. Time is short. Anyone else? Terry. Spike. Dig in. Dig in. Dig in. This is America. It's the land of the cookies. Aaron.
What is wisdom?
I wouldn't know. Sometimes people impress us with let's say you go somewhere for a few years, you lock yourself in a room, and you read the dialogues of Plato, okay, and you take notes. And then you put the book away and you begin to look at the notes and you say, maybe I should write a book about Plato. And you create chapters and you write in a very systematic way. Epistemology, ethics, political philosophy, all according to Plato. And then you come to class after having collected a good amount of data, i.e. information, and then piecing the information together in a very harmonious way. And then you come to class, and then you speak about Plato. And then you hammer the rest of us because of your knowledge. You're nothing but a good parrot, a parrot who struggled and sacrificed and suffered through reading 2,000 pages, writing the stuff, and I am impressed by your knowledge. Okay. And I may come to you and seeking advice for how to make my relationship work. And you're going to give me metaphysics in the sense that you're going to say, well, you know, Amir, you have a soul that came from the world of ideas and A, B, C, D. Your wife is very much the same way, but we both came down here, and now this is the allegory of the cave, the world of shadows. Don't be angry at your wife. It's just a shadow. You can give me those things and you can pacify me. When you get children, when you have children, what happens is every time they throw a temper tantrum, you stick this plastic in their mouth and they, quiet down. And that's how people are pacified. You pacify them with like ridiculous information. And you can know and you can figure out where to go to find the dialogues of Plato. You can buy it from Amazon, the library. You can download it on Google. Okay. So most of the things that you and I want from life, your five senses, and other people can help you. Wisdom, on the other hand, first, I have no idea what the hell it is. Second, I don't think you can Google that stuff. And I don't think books have the capacity to hold wisdom. I don't really know what it is. But I think you should, if Anthony Scalia, the justice who died, the Supreme Court justice, he was once asked, what's pornography? And his answer was really quite insightful, which was, I can't tell you what pornography is, but I know it when I see it. And I think wisdom is the same way. For some strange reason, there is this antenna inside us. We intuit it, but we can't quite describe it. It puzzles us. We become attracted to it, and when someone says, well, why are you attracted to it? We can't tell it. We can't speak it. And so it's... and I think it's one of those mysteries that should be left alone. The truth is, it's none of your goddamn business. If you've experienced it, if you've felt it, if you've intuited it, rest in it. And there's another thing you should know. The door that opens, that you walk through and intuit that you're in the presence of wisdom, that opening will only last for a short while. Then it closes. Right, Terry? Yes, Matt, we have like a minute.
So Plato said that aristocracy was the best form of government.
Who said that?
Was it Plato or was it Socrates?
Okay.
And that democracy was, deeply flawed.
Okay.
Based on the polling, I kind of think he's starting to be more and more right about democracy.
Well, you don't need to really go all the way there. Why don't I not come to class next week, Tuesday, and you guys just talk philosophy? How's that? That's democracy for you. Lots of freedom. Wild animals in this room. Just go at it. But something very interesting will happen. Some people will shine. Shine in the sense that some people will begin to talk and others will listen. In every group, what usually happens is some people just organically rise to the top and others just follow like the sheep. Okay? What you have in regards to the philosopher king, even in this class, is I have some age on me, I have some experience on me, I have some degrees, and I have 30, 40 years of experience. I also come from a culture that's reflective and philosophical. And just in case you want to intellectually wrestle with me on a certain concept or an idea, I will beat your ass. Now, you can do a couple of things. When I beat you, you can hate me, you can fear me, you can respect me, you can love me, or you can drop the class. And all of a sudden you realize, well, since you don't stand a chance in this class and you don't want to be embarrassed, because if you continue harassing me in this class, I will embarrass you. And if you have any respect for yourself, from that point on, you will keep your mouth shut. I rule, and you are my subject. And if I am authentic, if I am earnest and sincere, I'm not malicious, your silence will benefit you because your ears will open, you will begin to see, you will begin to process, you will begin to understand. And that will increase your own sense of maturity. What you will have if I don't show up on Tuesday is a bunch of people just barking at an idea. And people will walk away saying, well, that was a great class, but at the end, you don't really have much. It was just a moment of inspiration, fascination, excitement. That's just like just having an orgasm, but not a relationship. Plato was right. Well, it's good to see all of you. Well, not really all of you, some of you. See you Thursday. By the way, just in case any of you want to come up and to the office, like before class, you're always welcome. I know that on the first day I told you not to come, and I actually meant it. I still mean it, but just in case, So, just make sure you don't come empty-handed. If you don't have money, steal a bag of coffee. Just make sure you don't get caught. And make sure you shower and dress well. Any questions or comments before we go home? Yes, Terry. You don't have to leave. We can talk some more. Yeah.
I just realized I won't be here on Thursday.
What do you mean?
I'm a doctor.
I hope things go well. I will pray for you. Not really, but good luck with everything. I'm sure you'll be fine. You have another like 100 years to go, so. Anyone else is not going to be on Wednesday or Thursday? Matthew? Yes. Thank you. Good luck. Well, if you guys need to leave, then please. The door is there. But if you want to stay, you can stay. I'll stay. We can talk. Where are you going, Dean? I'm sorry. Take care, man. Hold office. Hold office. It's okay. No, it's all good. Take care of yourself. You have what?
I'm an exterminator.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. Take care. Yeah. Take care. Bye. What is that? Is that a rabbit?
No, it's a guinea pig.
What? It's like a tiny rabbit?
No, guinea pig.
Does it look like a rabbit?
No.
What kind of animal is it? Let me see. I've never seen one.
This is him.
Jesus. Why do you have that? I mean, really?
Yeah. Like in January, I was gonna go to my cousin's house, but my brother went to go throw away some things, and then he called me. He was like, "There's a thing."
Yeah, that's how men talk. There's a thing in the trash, yeah.
I ran over there, and then I just saw it. It was like hiding. So I figured out someone